When I say act like a billionaire, I'm not talking about private jets, mansions on the ocean, or designer watches that cost more than your car. I'm talking about the mindset, the energy, the hunger, and the discipline that billionaires live by. Because the truth is, if you don't shift your psychology, if you don't step into a new identity, then no amount of strategies, tactics, or opportunities will matter. You'll sabotage yourself before you even start. Billionaires don't think in terms of limits. They don't look at a problem and say, I can't do this. They say, how can I? Who do I need? What's the way through? They live in the world of possibility, and that's the world you need to step into. Because if you live in scarcity, you'll always be fighting for scraps. If you live in abundance, you'll start creating, building, expanding, because that's your natural state when you unleash it. But here's the catch. It's not about money. Money is a byproduct. Acting like a billionaire is about owning your time, commanding your focus, and living with absolute certainty. It's about training your brain to see opportunities where others only see obstacles. It's about conditioning yourself every single day to raise your standards so high that nothing average can survive in your world. A billionaire doesn't wake up and hit snooze 10 times. A billionaire doesn't scroll endlessly on social media comparing themselves to everyone else. They wake up with intention. They wake up with clarity. They wake up with a question burning in their minds. How can I make today matter? How can I create something that will outlast me? And if you're sitting there saying, I'm not even close to being a billionaire, let me tell you, neither were they. Every billionaire started as a kid with an idea, a dream, or sometimes nothing at all. Some were broke. Some were in debt. Some were told they weren't smart enough, weren't good enough, would never make it. The difference. They didn't buy into the story. They created a new one. So if you want to act like a billionaire, you start with your state. Energy is everything. When you raise your energy, you shift your focus. When you shift your focus, you make better decisions. When you make better decisions, you get new results. That's how you break the cycle. Act like a billionaire means stop thinking in terms of days and weeks. Start thinking in decades. Stop thinking in terms of what you can get. Start thinking in terms of what you can give. Billionaires don't play for small stakes. They play for impact. They play to leave a legacy. They play to solve problems that scare most people away. And here's the ultimate truth. You don't wait until you have billions to act like one. You act like it now. You lead yourself now. You demand more from yourself now. You show up with the energy, the focus, the boldness of someone who already has it. Because success doesn't come to the person waiting for permission. Success comes to the person who claims it, who embodies it, who becomes it long before the world can see it. So when you leave here today, ask yourself, am I acting like a billionaire? Am I owning my time, owning my energy, owning my vision? Or am I letting distractions, doubts, and fears dictate my life? Because the moment you decide, the moment you raise your standard, the moment you start living like it's already yours, that's when everything changes. When you shift from scarcity to abundance thinking, your entire world transforms because scarcity is the prison that keeps most people trapped, living in fear, holding themselves back, and accepting less than they deserve, while abundance is the key that unlocks creativity, power, and possibility. Scarcity whispers in your ear and tells you there is not enough money, not enough opportunity, not enough time, not enough resources, not enough connections, and not enough chances. It convinces you to compete for crumbs when you have the ability to bake your own loaf. Abundance, on the other hand, opens your eyes to realize there is more than enough to go around, that opportunities are everywhere, and that success is not a zero-sum game where someone else's win means your loss. When you truly step into abundance, you stop living in reaction and start living in creation. Scarcity keeps people stuck in a cycle of fear, fear of failing, fear of losing, fear of rejection, fear of trying and not getting the result. Abundance wipes that fear out because it shifts the question from what if it doesn't work to what if it does, from what if I lose to what if I win, and from what if I'm not enough to what if I'm more powerful than I ever imagined. This is the difference between playing small and playing big, between settling and expanding, between merely surviving and truly thriving. When you look at the most successful people, the ones who build businesses, transform industries, and create wealth that spans generations, the common thread is not luck or even raw intelligence. It is their ability to see possibility where others only see limitation. While most people look at a wall and stop, they see a door that just hasn't been built yet. When most people shrink back from risk, they expand into it because they know the bigger the problem, the bigger the potential reward. They live in abundance because abundance teaches them that resources can be created, skills can be learned, networks can be built, and opportunities can be multiplied. Scarcity locks people into a fixed mindset where they believe the pie is limited, that there's only so much to go around, so they scramble to protect what little they have. Abundance puts you in a growth mindset where you bake more pies, create new markets, and expand possibilities for yourself and others. Imagine how your life changes when instead of asking, can I afford this? You ask, how can I afford this? Instead of saying, I can't do this. You say, how can I make this possible? Instead of thinking late, you decide just the beginning. That shift doesn't just open doors. It creates doors. Scarcity is exhausting because it makes you operate from fear. It makes you cling tightly to what you have, terrified that if you take a risk, you'll lose it all. It keeps you small, hesitant, always second-guessing, always overthinking. Abundance is energizing because it makes you operate from possibility. You're no longer paralyzed by fear because you realize that even if you fail, you can create again. Even if one door closes, another 10 can open if you're willing to see them. With abundance thinking, failure is not final, it's feedback, it's education, it's a stepping stone to growth. Scarcity makes you guard your ideas. Abundance inspires you to share them, knowing that collaboration often leads to breakthroughs you couldn't achieve alone. Scarcity says, what if I give and there's nothing left for me? Abundance says, the more I give, the more flows back to me multiplied. Scarcity makes you resent other people's success. Abundance makes you celebrate it because you know their win is proof that more is possible for you too. This shift is not just about money. It's about every area of life, your relationships, your health, your career, your confidence, your contribution. When you embrace abundance, you stop settling for scraps of love, scraps of opportunity, scraps of happiness. You raise your standard because you know there's more out there waiting for you. If you're willing to reach for it, most people live in scarcity without even realizing it. They say things like, I don't have time, I can't afford it. People like me don't get chances like that. Those statements sound small, but they become self-fulfilling prophecies because your brain is always listening. If you tell yourself you don't have time, your brain won't look for time. It will shut down possibility. If you say you can't afford it, your brain won't look for creative ways to make it possible. It will accept defeat. Abundance language, however, opens up new pathways. When you start saying, how can I make the time? Your brain begins to reorganize priorities. When you ask, how can I afford it? Your brain starts seeking strategies and opportunities. The words you choose reveal whether you're living in scarcity or abundance. That's why billionaires and high achievers speak differently. They train their language to reflect possibility, not limitation. They reprogram their mind to expect more, to seek more, to demand more. And over time, their reality shifts to match that expectation. The most powerful part of abundance thinking is that it's not dependent on your current circumstances. You don't need $1 million in the bank to think abundantly. You need the courage to think abundantly to ever create $1 million in the first place. Abundance is a mindset, not a bank statement. You can be broke and still abundant if you see possibilities instead of walls. You can be rich and still stuck in scarcity if you live in fear of losing what you have. That's why acting like a billionaire doesn't start with money, it starts with mindset. Because if you can master abundance thinking before you have the wealth, you'll naturally attract the wealth, the opportunities, the people, and the experiences that multiply it. Scarcity blinds you to opportunities even when they're right in front of you. Abundance opens your vision so you see opportunities everywhere you look. The shift from scarcity to abundance is the moment you stop asking, what's left for me? And start asking, what can I create next? It's the moment you stop fearing the future and start designing it. It's the moment you stop playing small and start stepping fully into your potential. Raise your standards daily, because the truth is your life will always reflect the standards you set for yourself, not the goals you talk about, not the dreams you daydream about, but the standards you live by every single day. If your standard is average, you will attract average results. If your standard is excellence, you will demand more of yourself, and life will meet you at that level. Think about it. Everything in your life right now, your health, your relationships, your finances, your career, is a reflection of the standards you've decided are acceptable. If you tolerate being tired all the time, then your body will adapt to that. If you tolerate being broke, your mind will normalize it. If you tolerate mediocrity, your environment will feed you more of it. But the moment you raise your standard, the moment you draw a line in the sand and say, this is no longer acceptable, I demand more, that's when transformation begins. Raising your standards isn't about willpower. It's about identity. You don't get long-lasting change by saying, I should eat healthier, or I should work harder. Change sticks when you shift from, I should to, I must, when you decide this is who I am now. If your identity is, I'm someone who values energy, then you don't negotiate about eating junk food or skipping workouts because that's not aligned with who you are. If your identity is I'm someone who delivers excellence, then you don't cut corners, you don't procrastinate, you don't settle because that would break the standard you've chosen. People love to say they want better results, but they rarely stop to ask, what kind of person do I need to become to attract and sustain those results? Raising your standard daily means constantly stepping into that new identity, demanding more from yourself, not in one massive leap, but in every small choice you make throughout the day. Discipline is the bridge between your standards and your results. Without discipline, your standards remain words, but with discipline, they become your reality. Discipline is doing what you said you would do long after the emotion you felt when you said it has faded. Anyone can be motivated for a moment, but discipline is what carries you when motivation disappears. It's waking up earlier when you'd rather sleep in. It's pushing through the extra rep at the gym when you're tired. It's finishing that project when every part of you wants to put it off until tomorrow. Every time you choose discipline, you're raising your standard. You're sending a message to your brain and to the world. This is who I am. This is the level I play at. This is the standard I accept. And the more you practice it, the stronger it becomes until discipline feels less like a struggle and more like a natural extension of who you are. Energy is the fuel that drives your standards. You can't perform at a high level if you're running on empty. Billionaires, top athletes, world-class performers, they all obsess over their energy because they know without it, their standards collapse. Your energy is not just physical, it's mental and emotional. If your body is sluggish, your mind slows down. If your emotions are drained, your decisions suffer. Raising your standards means taking responsibility for your energy every single day, fueling your body with the right foods, moving it with exercise, renewing it with rest, and protecting it from toxic influences. People who operate at the highest levels don't allow themselves to get dragged down by gossip, negativity, or distractions. They guard their focus fiercely because they understand their energy is the currency of their success. If you want to raise your standards daily, you have to commit to raising the level of energy you bring into every room, every conversation, every project. You can't bring weak energy and expect strong results. Focus is another pillar of high standards. Where your focus goes, your energy flows, and what you consistently focus on, you create more of. Most people's standards are low because their focus is scattered. They spend their days reacting instead of creating, scrolling instead of building, comparing instead of executing. To raise your standards, you must raise the quality of your focus. That means asking yourself daily, am I focused on what truly matters, or am I wasting time on what doesn't move me forward? Am I feeding my brain with growth or numbing it with noise? Am I directing my attention toward opportunities or toward distractions? The difference between someone who lives in mediocrity and someone who lives at the peak of performance is not talent, it's focus. One wastes it, the other sharpens it like a weapon and uses it to carve their future. The key to raising your standards is to make it non-negotiable. Most people treat their dreams like preferences. They'd like to be fit, they'd like to be successful, they'd like to be wealthy. But preferences don't create change, only standards do. If your standard is that you must take care of your health, then you don't miss workouts. If your standard is that you must provide massive value in your work, then you don't deliver late or half-heartedly. If your standard is that you must live with integrity, then you don't cut corners or break promises. Every area of your life rises to the level of what you demand of it. When you make excellence your standard, excellence eventually becomes your habit. And when it becomes your habit, it becomes your identity. That's why you don't raise your standards once, you raise them daily. Every day you ask yourself, am I living at the level I said I would live at? Am I holding myself to the person I want to become? Am I showing up at the highest level available to me right now? The truth is, life will test your standards constantly. It will throw obstacles, delays, failures, and disappointments in your path to see if you're serious. Scarcity thinkers drop their standards the moment things get tough, but abundant thinkers, billionaire thinkers, they raise their standards even higher in those moments. They don't lower the bar. They elevate their performance. They use setbacks as fuel to reinforce the identity they've chosen. When the pressure hits, they don't crumble, they expand. They don't say, this is too hard. They say, this is the standard, and I will rise to meet it. Every challenge is an opportunity to prove your standard is real, not just words. That's why discipline, energy, and focus are so essential. They are the tools that help you hold the line when life tests you, and life will always test you. And here's the most powerful part: when you raise your standards daily, the world responds. People notice. Opportunities appear. Doors open. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you changed. You no longer tolerate less than excellence, and the world adjusts to meet you there. Relationships shift because you no longer accept toxicity. Finances shift because you no longer accept lack. Your career shifts because you no longer accept average. Everything around you reorganizes itself to match the level you've decided to demand from yourself. That's why raising your standards daily is not just an idea, it's a strategy for transformation. Because as soon as you lift the standard, you lift your life. Think in decades, not days, because the way you measure time determines the size of your vision, the weight of your patience, and the depth of your commitment. Most people live for the short term. They want results today. They want instant gratification. They want the feeling of progress without the discipline of consistency. But the people who build empires, who create movements, who transform industries, they think differently. They stretch their vision so far into the future that temporary setbacks don't shake them, distractions don't derail them, and failures don't define them. When you think in days, every small obstacle feels like a wall, every delay feels like defeat, every failure feels final. But when you think in decades, that same obstacle becomes a lesson, that delay becomes a setup, that failure becomes a stepping stone. The long-term perspective shrinks the short-term pain because you realize the game is bigger than today. Most people underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years and overestimate what they can achieve in one. They burn themselves out chasing quick wins, constantly frustrated when things don't move fast enough, when money doesn't flow instantly, when recognition doesn't arrive overnight. Thinking in decades frees you from that trap because you understand that greatness compounds. Just like interest on money grows exponentially over time, so does the interest on discipline, on focus, on learning, on relationships, on execution. One workout doesn't change your body. One book doesn't change your mind. One investment doesn't make you wealthy. But years of consistent workouts transform your health. Years of learning transform your wisdom. Years of investing transform your wealth. Thinking in decades teaches you that consistency beats intensity. That building slowly and steadily creates foundations too strong to be shaken. And that time is not your enemy, but your most powerful ally. When you expand your timeline, your vision expands with it. People who think in days set goals like, I want to lose weight for summer, or I want to make quick money this month. But people who think in decades ask, what kind of health do I want to have when I'm 50, 60, 70? Or what kind of wealth do I want to pass on to my family? Or what kind of impact do I want my work to have on the world long after I'm gone? Those are questions that force you to raise your standard because they require long-term solutions, not temporary fixes. You can't cheat your way to a decade of health. You can't fake your way into a decade of wealth. You can't shortcut your way into a decade of legacy. Thinking long forces you to play at a higher level because the small, lazy, short-term moves collapse over time, but consistent, disciplined action multiplies. The people who think in decades are the ones who write books instead of tweets, who build companies instead of chasing gigs, who create wealth instead of cash flow alone, who shape culture instead of just consuming it. Another power of thinking in decades is resilience. When your horizon is short, every failure feels catastrophic. Lose a client, and you feel like you're done. Miss a deadline, and you feel like you've blown it. Launch a project that flops, and you feel like you should quit. But when your horizon is 10, 20, 30 years, you realize one lost client doesn't matter in the grand scheme. One missed opportunity is just a blip. One failed launch is a tuition fee in the school of mastery. You stop seeing failures as the end and start seeing them as part of the process. That resilience gives you the ability to keep showing up, to keep pushing forward, to keep experimenting, because you know that as long as you're still in the game, time is on your side. The longer you stay in the game, the more inevitable your success becomes, because the world cannot resist the force of consistency compounded over time. Thinking in decades also forces you to master patience, and patience is one of the rarest currencies in the modern world. We live in a culture of speed, of instant likes, instant food, instant entertainment, and that conditioning makes us fragile. People give up on dreams because they don't happen in a year. They abandon visions because the results aren't immediate. But patience is the armor of the visionary. When you know you're building something for decades, you don't rush the process. You don't chase every shiny object. You don't compare your year one to someone else's year 20. You stay rooted in your path, knowing that true wealth, true mastery, true legacy require time. And patience is not passive. It's active faith. It's doing the work every single day with the belief that the harvest will come, even if the seeds take years to break the surface. When you think in decades, you start making different decisions. You don't ask, what feels good right now? You ask, What serves my future self 10 years from now? You don't waste energy on petty arguments, short-term pleasures, or instant rewards because you know those things are cheap and fleeting. Instead, you invest in relationships that grow with time, skills that compound with time, businesses that scale with time, and habits that strengthen with time. Every choice becomes an investment instead of an escape. That shift in decision making creates a powerful momentum because the small sacrifices you make today compound into massive rewards in the future. Skipping a party to study doesn't mean much in the short term, but over a decade, it separates you from the crowd. Saving money instead of wasting it doesn't feel significant in the moment, but over a decade, it creates freedom. Waking up early to work on your craft doesn't always feel glamorous, but over a decade, it creates mastery. Another key to thinking in decades is legacy. When your horizon expands, your goals stop being just about you. You start asking, what impact will I leave behind? How will my family, my community, my industry, my world be different because I was here? Billionaires don't just think about income, they think about impact. They don't just think about what they can accumulate, they think about what they can contribute. Legacy thinking forces you to rise above selfishness, to operate from a higher level of contribution, to build not just for your comfort, but for future generations. It's the reason why people who think in decades often become leaders, innovators, pioneers, because they're not just living for the applause of today, they're living for the echoes of tomorrow. And perhaps the most transformative part of thinking in decades is that it gives you freedom from the constant pressure of needing to make it instantly. When you see your life as a long game, you give yourself permission to experiment, to fail, to learn, to grow without the burden of immediate perfection. That freedom unlocks creativity because you're no longer paralyzed by the fear of messing up. You're not worried about looking foolish today because you know it's only a small piece of a much larger puzzle. That creative freedom leads to breakthroughs that short-term thinkers will never experience because they're too busy rushing, too busy proving, too busy grasping for crumbs instead of building their feast. Thinking in decades, not days, doesn't mean you don't act with urgency today. It means your urgency is aligned with a larger vision. It means you don't just chase the quick hit, you build the foundation. It means you don't just aim for survival, you aim for significance. It means every day matters, but not because it must bring instant results, but because it's one brick in the cathedral you're constructing, one note in the symphony you're composing, one chapter in the book of your legacy. Lead with value, because the fastest way to elevate your life, your business, your influence, and your relationships is to shift your focus from what you can take to what you can give. Most people move through life in a transactional mindset, always asking what's in it for me, always measuring every opportunity based on immediate gain, always calculating whether they are being overextended or under-awarded. That scarcity approach keeps them small, keeps them stuck, keeps them unnoticed, because the truth is value creates gravity. And when you lead with value, you become magnetic. People are drawn to those who give without keeping score, to those who create solutions instead of complaining about problems, to those who contribute first and trust that the rewards will flow back in due time. Leading with value isn't just an act of generosity, it's a strategy for growth, for influence, for abundance. When you look at the most successful people in the world, whether in business, leadership, or art, they didn't get there by chasing the quickest paycheck. They got there by obsessing over value. The entrepreneur who dominates an industry doesn't ask, how do I make money today? They ask, how do I create something so valuable that people can't imagine living without it? The leader who builds a loyal team doesn't ask, how do I get people to follow me? They ask, how do I serve them so powerfully that following me becomes natural? The artist who leaves a legacy doesn't ask, how do I get famous? They ask, how do I create something that moves people, inspires people, changes people? When you lead with value, money, recognition, and influence stop being the target and start being the byproduct. They come as a result of the value you've poured into the world. Leading with value also shifts your relationships because it moves you from a mindset of taking to a mindset of contributing. Instead of asking, what can this person do for me? You ask, how can I make their life better? How can I support them? How can I add to their journey? That shift creates deeper trust, stronger connections, and lasting loyalty, because people feel when someone is with them for what they can give versus what they can get. In friendships, it means showing up consistently, listening more than speaking, encouraging more than criticizing. In business, it means serving your clients beyond the contract, delivering more than expected, surprising them with excellence. In leadership, it means caring for your people, not just as workers, but as human beings with dreams, fears, and families. Relationships built on value outlast transactions, and in a world where most people operate transactionally, You instantly stand out when you choose contribution. One of the most powerful things about leading with value is that it creates opportunities that shortcuts and self-interest never could. When you're the person who consistently gives, who consistently solves, who consistently uplifts, doors open for you. People remember you. They talk about you. They refer you. They want to collaborate with you. Your reputation becomes your currency, and that reputation is built on the trail of value you've left behind. Think of it like planting seeds. Every time you add value to someone's life, you're planting a seed. Maybe it grows tomorrow, maybe it grows in 5 years, but eventually the harvest comes back multiplied. The person you helped without expecting anything in return might introduce you to a life-changing connection later. The client you over-delivered for might bring you 10 more clients. The community you poured into might elevate you into leadership. But if you move through life only giving when you see an immediate return, you rob yourself of the exponential rewards that come with patience and trust. Leading with value requires you to operate from abundance, because if you're stuck in scarcity, you'll always hesitate to give. You'll always think, if I help them, I'll have less for myself. If I share my ideas, they'll steal them. If I give too much, I'll be taken advantage of. That mindset keeps your hands closed, and closed hands can't receive. But abundance reminds you that there's more than enough to go around, that giving doesn't subtract from you, but multiplies through you, that the more you pour out, the more flows back in. When you lead with value, you stop worrying about who owes you and start trusting that the universe, the marketplace, the network, the community will eventually balance the scales in your favor. It may not come from the same person you gave to. It may not come in the same form you expected, but it will come because value always circulates back. This principle is especially true in business. The companies that dominate the world are not the ones that focus on how do we extract the most money from our customers. They are the ones that ask, how do we deliver the most value? That's why some brands become indispensable. They obsess over creating the best experience, the best service, the best product, until their value is so undeniable that customers don't just buy from them. They become advocates. When you lead with value, you stop competing on price, because value makes you priceless. People will always pay more, wait longer, and remain loyal to the ones who deliver more than expected. That's the power of a value-first mindset. It elevates you above the noise. It makes you unforgettable in a world where everyone else is chasing the next quick win. Leading with value also transforms how you show up in your craft. Instead of chasing recognition, you chase mastery. Instead of worrying about how fast you grow, you focus on how deeply you can serve. You ask yourself daily, how can I do this better? How can I make this more useful? How can I make this more meaningful? That obsession with value sharpens your skills, strengthens your reputation, and expands your influence. Over time, the gap between you and the competition widens, because while they were cutting corners to get ahead, you were raising the bar to serve more. Leading with value builds an unshakable foundation, because while trends change, markets shift, and technologies evolve, value never goes out of style. The world will always reward the ones who bring more, give more, and serve more, and perhaps the most profound shift is what happens inside you when you lead with value. You begin to operate at a higher frequency because you're no longer consumed with taking, with scarcity, with fear of lack. You wake up with purpose because you know your life is about contribution, not just consumption. You carry yourself with confidence because you know you are valuable, not because of what you own, but because of what you give. You start to experience fulfillment, not just success, because fulfillment doesn't come from accumulation. It comes from contribution. The joy of giving, of serving, of impacting others creates a deeper satisfaction than any material reward ever could. And when that becomes your way of life, success chases you, opportunities chase you, abundance chases you, because the universe always expands around those who expand value into it. Embody success now, because the most powerful shift you can ever make is to stop waiting for external results, to give yourself permission to think, feel, and act like the person you want to become. Most people live in a cycle of delay, always telling themselves, when I have more money, then I'll feel abundant. When I get the promotion, then I'll feel confident. When I build the business, then I'll show up like a leader. When I reach the milestone, then I'll allow myself to think like a success. That thinking is backwards, because your identity always precedes your results. You don't achieve first and then become. You become first and then achieve. The world reflects who you are being, not who you say you want to be. If you want to attract wealth, you need to think, act, and carry yourself with the responsibility and focus of someone who already manages wealth. If you want to attract influence, you need to speak, move, and serve with the presence of someone who already has influence. If you wanted to attract opportunities, you need to operate with the certainty of someone who already has opportunities flowing to them. You embody the success before it shows up, and by doing so, you accelerate its arrival. Embodying success is about shifting from hoping into becoming. Hope is passive. It says, I wish this would happen someday. Becoming is active. It says, I am already the kind of person who creates this reality. When you embody success now, you step into a state of ownership. You no longer wait for permission. You no longer wait for validation. You no longer wait for conditions to be perfect. You start showing up today as if it's already yours. That doesn't mean pretending or faking it. It means aligning your behavior, your energy, your decisions with the identity of the future you. If the future you is disciplined, then embody discipline now. If the future you is wealthy, then embody financial responsibility now. If the future you is a leader, then embody leadership now. That embodiment rewires your brain because your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is vividly imagined and consistently acted upon. When you act like it's already yours, your brain starts building the neural pathways to make it real, and your environment begins to shift to align with your identity. Embodying success now also raises your standards because once you decide this is who I am, you stop tolerating anything less. If you embody the identity of a healthy person, you no longer negotiate with unhealthy habits. If you embody the identity of a confident person, you no longer entertain self-doubt conversations that keep you small. If you embody the identity of a successful entrepreneur, you no longer waste time on distractions that don't serve your mission. Embodiment creates alignment, and alignment eliminates the internal conflict that keeps most people stuck. People say they want success, but they act like someone who doesn't believe it's possible. They want abundance, but they behave like someone who fears lack. They want love, but they carry themselves like someone who doesn't deserve it. That contradiction creates resistance. But when you embody success now, your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions line up. You stop sending mixed signals to the world, and the world responds with clarity. One of the most important aspects of embodying success is energy. Success has a frequency, a vibration, a way it feels. When you step into a room with certainty, presence, confidence, people feel it. That energy attracts opportunities. It builds trust. It creates momentum. If you wait until you have external results to generate that energy, you'll never get there because results don't create energy. Energy creates results. Embodying success means waking up every morning and generating the energy of the person you want to be, even before the evidence is there. It's choosing to stand taller, to speak with clarity, to move with purpose, to radiate belief. That energy draws the right people, the right opportunities, and the right circumstances into your orbit. It shifts how others perceive you, and more importantly, it shifts how you perceive yourself. Embodying success also requires discipline because consistency is what makes the identity real. It's not about acting like success for one day and then slipping back into old habits. It's about choosing day after day to live in alignment with the higher version of yourself. Every decision becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Do you hit snooze or do you get up and execute? Do you waste hours in distraction or do you invest them in growth? Do you give in to fear? Do you act in courage? Every small choice reinforces the identity. The more you embody success, the less effort it takes because it becomes who you are. Identity is powerful because once something becomes part of your identity, you no longer have to push yourself to do it. You naturally live it. That's why embodying success now creates momentum faster than waiting for results. You don't have to force discipline when you already see yourself as disciplined. You don't have to force confidence when you already embody confidence. You don't have to force leadership when you already live as a leader. Another key element of embodying success is visualization combined with action. You can't just sit and visualize the future version of yourself. You must also act on it daily. Visualization primes your brain. It rehearses success in advance. It gives you clarity on who you're becoming. But action grounds that vision and reality. When you embody success, you combine both. You visualize yourself delivering with excellence. Then you take the action to deliver with excellence. You visualize yourself managing wealth responsibly. Then you make decisions today that align with that vision. You visualize yourself being a person of influence, then you show up today and speak with influence. This blend of imagination and execution creates acceleration. You begin to collapse the gap between who you are now and who you want to become because you're living both simultaneously. Embodying success now also frees you from the trap of waiting for external validation. Most people hold back because they're afraid of judgment. They don't act like leaders because no one has called them a leader yet. They don't act like creators because no one has given them a platform yet. They don't act like influencers because no one is watching yet. But the truth is, people don't follow titles. They follow energy. If you embody success, if you carry yourself with certainty, if you show up with presence, people will begin to recognize you as the very thing you decided to embody. The world doesn't crown you first, you crown yourself first. When you claim it internally, the external recognition eventually follows. But if you wait for the world to give you permission, you'll wait forever. Perhaps the deepest transformation that comes from embodying success now is the way it rewires your sense of worth. You stop chasing success as something outside of you, as something you need to earn to prove your value, and you begin to realize that your value comes from within. By embodying success, you're declaring, I am already enough, I am already worthy, I am already capable. And from that state, you create results not out of desperation, but out of overflow. You stop trying to get success to validate you, and instead you create success as an extension of who you already know yourself to be. That shift creates peace, confidence, and fulfillment. You're no longer chasing success. You're expressing success. You're no longer trying to become worthy. You're living from the truth that you already are. And when that becomes your reality, success stops being something you're chasing in the future and starts being something you're embodying in the present.